Welcome to C Programming Tutorials. This is a production of the YouTube channel Learnorama and the Facebook page Awesome C Programming Tutorials in High Def. In today's tutorial, we are basically learning about how to pass arrays as parameters to a function. This is actually continuation of this tutorial. We have been learning about it in the previous video as well. If you haven't watched the part 1 of this tutorial, I would recommend that you watch that first. The link of that tutorial must be on the screen right now. So let's get started. So what we are trying to do here in this particular tutorial is basically write a program where we are going to we have this array of integers which basically is holding the number of days in each of the months of a year, basically 12 of them, obviously. So we declared an array of integer with 12 elements, and each element basically is representing the number of days in the corresponding month. So, and we have hard coded those numbers right here. Okay, and then we are basically going to call into a function that we are going to write now, and we haven't written it yet, but we are imagining that we have a function that would do that. What is it going to do? I'm going to give this function this array, and what it's going to do is basically it's going to add up all the elements in there, okay, for me, and then it will basically return me the sum of all these numbers. So look at this. I mean, I'm just imagining all these things. I have never written that function yet, and I don't know how it's going to add on all this, and it really doesn't matter. That's the beauty of writing functions. Okay, this is also called top-down design. Basically what you do is you start from the top, which is basically the main function, and then you just write your program right there without worrying about finishing it up. So I'm just going to imagine that there is a function that exists that will do that, and then I'm going to pass it this array just by passing the name of the array here. Okay, and that's perfect call. This is how you pass a parameter to the function. Okay, are we done here with this tutorial? No, because we need to learn to write how to basically write this function, how this function definition is going to look like, so that it can accept this array as a parameter. But for now, we know that I can make a call like this by passing this array. What it's going to do, it's going to compute the sum of all these numbers right here, right? And then it's going to return the sum by name, and that would be the total number of days in the year. So let's create another integer to hold the total number of days. So total number of days in year. Okay, and if you want, you could initialize it to 0. But if you don't, even if you don't, I mean, it's always a good idea to initialize every variable that you create. Okay, but if you don't, that's okay too, because we know that we are going to initialize it with the value that this function is going to return. In fact, you could basically, I've never done this in these tutorials, you could basically write then and there at the initialization time, you could write something like this too. This is perfectly at the declaration time, you could do this too. This is perfect syntax. So you could basically not only initialize an integer with the constant number, you could initialize it with the value returned by a function call. You could do that too. So if you don't understand this, that's fine too. You could basically always do this. You declare that function that variable first, and then you basically assign it the value returned by that function call. Okay, and that's it. At that point, after running, after getting done with this statement, this function call, n days in year will have the number of days in a year, and then we are going to print out the number of days in a year is a number that's going to go here, and then the next line, and then what is the value? What variable holds the value of the total number of days in the year? N days in year. Okay, this is it. This is our program, except of course we don't know, we don't have the definition for this one. If you try to compile it, the compiler is going to complain that it doesn't know about this function. But the point is that, look at this, the beauty of writing functions is basically you have your program at at least to a certain extent finished without worrying about the details of the program. And then more beauty of this thing is basically then you start writing this function, start declaring this function, compute days in a year, okay, without worrying about the rest of the program. All you have to worry about is to how to write this function. What is that function? It takes an array of integers and it adds all the elements together and returns the sum. That's what it does, okay? And you have no idea what the rest of the program is for. So that's another beauty of writing function. It breaks your big task into little pieces, smaller pieces that you can handle better, okay? This program itself is a pretty small program by itself, so you don't really need to worry about this. It's pretty small. You could if you wished, you could add it right there. But when you're writing bigger programs, you will have to worry about this, breaking your big task, the whole program, into smaller tasks, smaller pieces, which will be implemented by functions and some modules. We will learn about different modules. We will learn about modules later on. But for now, modularity is limited up to functions for us because we have learned about functions. But functions play a very important role in writing a modular, structured code. Okay, so let's write that function. So first thing we have to do is to declare the prototype of the function. Prototype is the header of the function, how the function is going to look like. So first thing we have to write is the type of the value that it's going to return. What would be the type of the value that it's going to return? What would the sum of the number of days of each of the months? It's going to be integer, okay, because it's the sum of integers. Sum of integers is always going to be an integer. So let's write int, okay, and then compute days in a year, which is the name of the function. And how are we going to pass the array to this function? It's very simple. It's just like the way we declared it, okay? You could just pass it just like that. You could basically do this right here. And the name of the array, just like before when we learned about other type of basic types, how to pass basic types like integer, character, and stuff like that. We learned that the name could be any name. It's a dummy name, okay, and it's valid only in this function, and it has nothing to do with this this function. If you are passing it by value, if you're passing it as the pointer to it, if you're passing the address of the variable, then yes, if you modify it inside, it will modify the value here. But if you're passing by value, if you modify that value here, it's not going to modify the value of the variable which basically resides in the caller, because this variable has the scope of this function, okay? So this variable that we are declaring, it's an array again, just like we declared it here, okay? And it has the scope of this here, this function itself. And if you want, you could call it any other name if you want, okay? You could call it, just days. Right here, like this. Let's call it days just to emphasize that this variable has nothing to do with this array variable here. Okay? And other thing is that here it is important at the time of declaration that you specify how many elements it has, because this is where this is first time it's like this array is born, this array is created. Okay, the compiler needs to know how many elements it has. So that's why you have to basically mention how many elements this array is going to have. Here, since it will be passed and since it has already been created before in the caller, you don't even need to declare the number of elements. So you could basically just very well say this in int days and square brackets. But square brackets are important to tell the compiler that it is an array. If you don't put in square brackets, what is it going to be? It's going to be just simple integer. It's not going to be an array, and the compiler will be confused if you'll start using accessing the elements of this array inside. So we'll stop here. We are running out of time. We'll continue it in the next tutorial. Please keep watching. Thank you so much.